We
can
can
hear
hear
me
you.
5 out of 5. Great. Let me try to connect my earphones. Great. Can anyone say anything, please? Oh, yeah.
Good morning. You can listen.
Amazing. We've made it. All right. How is everyone today? Can you hear me? That's great. I heard you have had an excursion to the helicopter spot. And do you see my video is moving, or I'm also frozen on your screen? Because on my screen, I see that my face is frozen. Just seconds of checking the settings, because on my side, I see frozen screen. All right, and the very final check. Can anyone say any word? I think we can start. I hope it will be perfect with all the technical issues. So I see we are 18, and I think we are supposed to be about 25 or 30 people, but I think it's fine. I hope we can start and they will join us once they have time. All right, so today we will be speaking about the greening the business. I don't know if you have ever heard about this phrase, but this is something that is becoming very popular lately, and mainly because of the direction towards the sustainable development. So today I will show you the agenda of our class. I hope it will last about 2 hours, and I will start with introduction of myself and the topic briefly. And then I would like to ask you to touch a map which will show us the biocapacity of country, because we are all from different countries. And I was told that at this class, there are students from 10 countries, or even 11, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it will be very interesting activity to see the biocapacity of different countries. And then we will discuss the sustainable development. Some of you may have heard of it, some of you may not. I hope, anyway, you will learn something new today. And then we will finally discuss about the greening the business, what it means, what kind of models you may learn today, and maybe you already know some examples from your personal experience. And this will be in the context of the circular economy. And finally, we will look for new examples of the circular economy models, and we will use the tool, which is also online, and I think it's really great. It's called Circulator. So we'll team up in a few teams, look for examples and tell each other what is the most exciting you found using this circulator. All right. So let me first introduce myself. My name is Ekaterina Markelova. I'm Russian and I hold 2 PhDs in Earth, Environment and Universe. And to go for PhDs, I had to go really far from Russia. And finally, I studied in Canada and France. Right now, I'm a professor at the Samara University, and I hold the position of Professor of Ecology and Sustainability. And also at the same time, I'm living in Barcelona, Spain. So today here I'm in Spain in the office. And here I work as expert in biogeochemistry at the consulting company Ampos 21. It is a scientific environmental company. And last year, I went to an exciting journey. I went to the educational program, which is designed by National Geographic. And I became the first Russian certified educator of National Geographic. And here you can see this image from National Geographic Network, because what I wanted to show is the new approach in education and in general how people think. Because the way we think, the society thinks, and the business models set, it defines our future and the future of our generations. So what is new about National Geographic approach is that if you can see, it goes from local to regional and to global scale. And maybe you have heard about this phrase, thinking local, but acting global, which means that if you have a local business company, you have to think in a broader scale. You have to think how it impacts the society and environment at the regional scale and even on the global scale. And that's what we will learn today. We will open the boundaries, the way we think, and the way we think about our environment. And also you can see here the intersection of different, so basically nowadays, we are living in the moment when it's already not enough to look at only one directions that are changing so rapidly that we have to think about historical aspects, what was before us, and we have to think about future, what will become with the society because of our business, because maybe we are not just selling mobile phones, we are having an impact to society, and also we may have an impact to environment. So this is the feature of the 21st century, where from the profession, which is very specific, and you are expert in a very narrow field, you have to go beyond one field and look at interdisciplinary boundaries. So that's the approach that is National Geographic is trying to immerse into the world. And having my experience, I'm using this framework to show opportunities and perhaps innovations for business companies, how they can still be evolving in terms of economic growth, but at the same time respecting other boundaries. Thank you, Daniel. So let's move forward and tell me about yourself. As far as I understand, here is a very multidisciplinary team of students from many, many countries. And I think that many already teachers asked you, what is your profession or what is your profession of your future? So I would like to ask you to write two words. First word is your profession, current or future, and then slash and write the answer. Do you think your profession has any relation to the ecology or nature? And simple yes or no will be enough. So I hope this will already a little bit open our minds in terms of our professions. Lawyer, yes. Interesting. We will wait a little bit for answers, and then maybe I will ask someone to share your ideas why you think your profession has impact or doesn't have impact. Law student, yes. Lawyer, yes. Regulation, natural resources, very important. Lawyer, yes. We have many lawyers. Law student, yes. Amazing. Someone with a little bit different profession. Maybe that's a little bit tricky question, and others who are not yet ready to write an answer are still thinking, is it yes or no? Okay. As far as I understand, we have another group, and there are like more students not from law or law studies, but they are shy or something. Why they are not answering? Please, we are waiting for any kind of answer because it's hard to be wrong here. All right, maybe while someone is still thinking, if his or her profession has any relation to the ecology or nature, I will ask some of you who already answered yes, share why you think and how you think your profession relates to nature. And for this, please join this video because I would like to see your face. Someone brave from the helicopter excursion. All right, then maybe I can ask a name. Daniel, can you share us what you think about this?
Sorry, what was the question?
Well, the same question that you already answered. Why you think your profession has any relation to nature?
Oh, okay. So I think that because, for example, when I work on one of the key things that I work for is compliance, corporate compliance, and that's a part of the law. So corporate compliance, my responsibility is to make sure that companies are having a sustainable development through sustainability, which, for example, most of the cases that I've studied so far are DuPont. There's actually a new film that was released, and that's called Dark Waters, that reflects that because of the use of a type of plastic, a lot of people died because of cancer, and they affected the environment. And the statistics said that 99% of all of the oceans and humans and living beings have been infected with that toxic plastic that was used by DuPont for establishing new pens that were having Teflon, something like that. That's the material. So that's my responsibility to make sure that companies comply with anti-money laundering, corporate law, and also sustainability and the ecological responsibilities towards their society. Thank you.
A great respect to your profession, because this is actually, I think, the direction of our future professions, to make sure that we comply with these environmental risks, that we do not cause harm to nature and to our health. Thank you very much for sharing your response. Anyone else want to share for example, from marketing or accounting? Yes. Everyone already know that their profession relates to nature. Maybe.
I work
Yeah?
with I work with the mining industry and
All right.
hydrocarbons, which are like petroleum. So it is highly related because we have to make sure that we comply with all the standards of nature, like the way we were before we arrived to a certain place to exploit minerals or other natural resources. And that is how it's related.
Yeah, and Lucy, what is your profession? I don't see in the chat. Maybe.
Oh,
before.
I'm a lawyer as well.
Lawyer. Yeah, mining has very strong impact on the environment, but we can always try to minimize or optimize this impact. So in these terms, lawyers should be on track with what is the best practices to minimize this impact. So thank you very much for doing this. And Olga, Elena, you have also something to share? I don't hear you. No, there is no sound at all. Something has to be turned on.
Now,
Yes, now.
Thank you. I'm a lawyer. I'm from Peru, and my first years of law. Well, not my first years. When I finished the career, I worked for the Ministry of Ecology. And then I work with ANA, the Authority of Water. And in Peru, there's a lot of projects that we have to develop. I think, especially with the water thing, because the contamination of the water, of the sea, we have a lot of contamination in the sea, and a lot of contamination also of the human consume. So I work for the Ministry of Ecology, and that was a new ministry because that was in 2010, recently. And then after that, I worked for the the National Authority of Water. And I know that, for example, in Peru, we have the Amazonas, we have jungle, and we have Titicaca. There's a big lake, and there's a lot of projects that must be developed. But you know, politics. The volume.
There is a way to grow for politics.
Yes. The thing is the politician, because the volunteer, want to do it, and this is a shame because there's a lot of poor people that need really that water for energy and cleaning. For example,
we have to be a little bit short here, so try to conclude your message.
I'm sorry. That I conclude. I'm a lawyer. I was involved in ecology things, and for me, it's a dream to conclude one of the projects to help my country.
Thank you very much. Yes. So this is introduction, and we have to be a little bit quick. And I see two more people want to share. So if you can drop it in 1 or 2 sentences, it would be great. Lucia, please.
We already talked. I was the lawyer in the mining industry. Yeah.
Okay, so nice to see your face. And then do you want to share something, or you just wanted to say hi? If you're saying anything, I don't hear you because your microphone is off. All right, let's continue. So feel free to turn on your camera, perhaps without the microphone on, because it's nice to see faces in front of me. So I don't feel that alone. So I invite everyone to turn your cameras.
It feels like a real class.
Yeah, thank you. Because I also need a mental support, you know. All right, so let's keep moving. And basically, the idea is that natural and human worlds are deeply interconnected. And sometimes we are forgetting, but actually, there are always two ways we are interacting with the planet. The first one is we always take something from the earth and we always return something back. So if you can write in the chat quickly what is one and what is two, but try to make it quick. We have to keep up with our timing. So write in chat, what do you think, what we take from the earth? And number two, what we return to the earth. Okay, we have first answers. Thank you, Lucy, for joining my class because everyone else is shy. All right, so what we return to the earth?
What do you mean by returning? Like maybe planting a seed or something like that? Does that count or not?
Well, it's a good question. Maybe it was not the best phrase from my side, but I was thinking here, like by using humans, normally we change something. And here, okay, I'll tell you the answer. Shortly, I will read the comments. You take minerals, give nothing. Okay, energy sources, yeah, wind, the heat, exactly, all this is right, and my second answer is even simpler. Perhaps my phrase was not a little bit correct, but the answer is waste. So we take resources, and Joan, you're right, it could be different resources. It could be light, it could be water, it could be plants, it could be food, soil, coal as well, and we return waste. So we never should forget that we are, with our interaction with planet, we are changing what we have taken at the first place. All right. Alberto, you need to search the equilibrium between the technology from the earth. This is the ultimate goal of the civilization, and I hope that we will not screw it to find this equilibrium. And I hope to show you some ways of models how to do it. So the thing is that now we don't have time, I mean, not at the lesson, but in the 21st century to lose any time. And we need rapid changes. And what is the fastest to change is probably business. Because of course we need governmental changes, but they take longer time. And business is basically, the business model is up to a specific board of directors. And this is the most flexible and perhaps the quicker way for changes. Because we know that people require resources and the population is growing. It has doubled over the last 40 years, and it is prognosed that it will double again in the next 40 years. So the population is growing rapidly, and the more people, the more resources we need. And as well, the more resources we use, the more waste we create. And interesting fact, I wanted to show this graph because you can see two kind of information here. The green area is basically the population growth. I'm sure you have seen it many times. But the other purple line, you see there was a peak and then it declining. So actually this is growth rate, which is saying that now our population is, although it's growing, but the rate is decreasing. So it means that there is a limited capacity of population on the earth, and the reason why the rate is decreasing is basically because right now it is limited by fertility. And some saying that it is because of the education and because more women want to become more business, so they plan less children. Others say it's more responsible attitude to have more children and to make sure that everyone will have proper education and food. And the third fact is actually that the environmental conditions are worsening. And for example, the air pollution causing 7 million deaths annually, and the air pollution is affecting the fertility. So the agenda that finally this logarithmic increase will stop. It will balance out at some point. And we have to change in the business models what we can do now to improve our environmental conditions, so that it won't be the question of fertility. It will be the question of choice, how many children you want to have. So here we come to the map where I wanted to show you how many resources left on the earth. And by colors, you can see like darker red is more resource deficiency, and the green is more resource abundancy. And basically what it does, it says the humanity has its environmental footprint, or sometimes it's called ecological footprint, right? So it's the amount of resources we use and how we regenerate our nature. So here I invite you to interact with this map and to see your own country. For example, I selected Russia, and when I will give you this link in a chat in a second, I just first want you to explain. So when you select your country, you will see this appearing window, and there are two types of numbers. First is the biocapacity per person. So it's basically the amount of land you have, the natural resources your country has, and divided by minimum requirements for the humanity. So here it says 7.0 in Russia is capacity, but when we take into account the number of people actually live in Russia, it turned out that we have less people that the land can cover. So the difference between these two numbers is 1.8, which is biocapacity reserve. Means that in Russia we still have some capacity to have more children, let's say, if this is equivalent. So let me give you the link, and I would like to ask you to find your own country and to write in the chat the number, if it is a reserve or deficit of natural resources in your country. And since we are from 11 countries, I think it will be super interesting to see. Alberto is saying that the reality of Mexico is true, that is in the deficiency of natural resources, right? That's what you mean. And that the reason that motivates you to be responsible and to fix these problems in ecosystems. That's perfect. So I hope everyone is already in the map. Let me know if you have any problems with accessing the map.
What does biocapacity mean? Reserve plus deficit? What?
Well, biocapacity is the potential of the amount of land in the country. So basically, this is very simple estimation, number of amount of land per amount of people living on that land. This is no big hidden resources are meant in this number. So this is very average, but it still gives an idea. For example, in Europe, we have not that much land in, let's say, in Germany, but the population is quite high. What is ecological footprint? Well, basically, this word means all the impacts that people have on the environment. It can be, for example, carbon footprint. I think you have heard about the emissions of carbon dioxide, right? So that are causing the climate change. And it's normally calculated in the carbon, how much carbon is released. So this is a carbon footprint. Then we have water footprint. For example, how much water we drink or use for cooking, but at the same time, how much water is used to produce our mobile phones, let's say, because every manufacturer needs water. So there are different footprints, and it could be plastic footprint, for example. for example, in the office, how much of water is delivered to your office in the single-use bottles. So this is a plastic footprint. And in general, environmental footprint or ecological footprint is a sum of or a combination of all different impacts that humanity may have to the Earth.
I'm
Okay,
seeing that most countries in my continent in South America have a much bigger biocapacity than the rest of the world apparently, like Brazil and Bolivia, and even mine. Most people have a minus number, like a negative number.
Minus, it means the deficiency. So minus, it means that they're already in debt. Like they have more people than the land can cover, because land produces resources, and at the same time we dump our waste and land has to take care of them, right? So the capacity of land to manage our resources and as well waste is less than amount of people living on that land. And you're right, so what we see in Indonesia, in Mexico, in China, in Malaysia,
the
we
United
have
States
negative
has minus 4.5 in the United States.
Right. Sometimes, for example, in Africa, it's also the environmental conditions. So that land is not that rich of nutrients. For example, there are not that many people, but the state of the land is poor. So it cannot give as much as it can give in the Amazon forest, let's say. So this is a combination of these factors. And thank you everyone who joined me in this small research. And I think now you know a little bit more about your own country. And what I wanted to tell you next is basically this is a very simplistic assumption that is likely wrong. So this is a good, just to keep in mind that we have limited amount of land while the population is always growing. So, but this kind of map is not exactly, is maybe not exactly showing us the true results. And it is because of the globalization and immigration. So for example, what I mean by the globalization, for example, the phone. We need to produce phone, and I guess everyone knows that our phone has the vibrating mode, right? So it's when it is shaking without the sound. And in order to do this, companies who manufacture phones, they need a metal which is called tungsten. So the metal itself is mined in Africa, and we can think that the Africa is having this environmental footprint on the environment because of the mining tungsten. But then tungsten is sent to Austria, the remaining plant, where the minerals are purified, refined, so they create metals, pure metals. But then from Austria, the metals sent to China for manufacture and for production phones. So this environmental footprint is spreading all over the globe. And from China, the devices, they're sold to the entire world. And it's really hard to understand where is exactly the footprint of one device. Because then we are using phones, we need to charge them, and for this we need electricity. And then after all, it may become waste. And where we are wasting, this resource is not exactly the same place where we took this resource. So these estimations make it a little bit perhaps wrong. And it's really, really hard to estimate the environmental footprint. So there is another approach how to do it. It's to calculate globally and to say, okay, let's consider the humanity in total. And in general, it is quantified that already our needs for sources and our place for waste is beyond the size of our planet. Basically, we need 1.75 Earth to cover our needs. And in terms of the year, it's sometimes said, for example, that let's say 1 year, 1 planet is 100% match, which is not good because in natural ecosystems, animals, they use probably 10% of the ecosystem capacity. So let's say 1 year is 100%. And for present day, it means that we are about 8 months in depth from the Earth in terms of the natural resources and waste. And basically, the situation is scary because the natural resources are depleted, and today is about 50% of Earth's land is already degraded. And the rate of this transformation is unsustainable. It's because of the agriculture, it's because of the mining. And here we comes to the word sustainable, unsustainable. And I just wanted to really rapidly answer in chat 3 pluses if you heard about sustainability, and 3 minus if you have never heard this word. So please write your answers. Okay, we see 1 plus. This is a question for your attention because I asked for 3 pluses. Okay, so
That is very smart of you.
Well, I imagine your day was long, especially after this exciting excursion. So I wanted to.
It's 9 a.m. here, so we just started. You're lucky that you have our full attention, at least the Peruvians.
Yay. So, yeah, the question was just if you have ever heard about the word sustainability. If you heard, 3 pluses. If you have never heard, 3 minuses. I just want to know a little bit about the audience because I was told that you are so different, all of you. All right, we have attention here, 3 pluses. All right. So I see that those who answered, they already heard about this word. And even though you have heard, I still maybe tell you some basics for those who has never heard. And still I hope that you will learn something new. Okay, so now we are moving to sustainable development. And as you may know, it is a program for the humanity, how to move towards to restore the planet and our economic system and social aspects for future generations. And first in 2000, it was set the Millennium Development Goals, and initially they were focusing mainly on the poverty. And you can see here the number of goals. And in 2000, they were set mainly for the first 6 goals, which were focusing mainly on the poverty, that people have no hunger, that everyone has an access to well-being and to the medical support, everyone has access to education and sanitation. So these were the basic Millennium Development Goals. And in 12 years in Rio de Janeiro, there was a conference by United Nations where they realized that this is only impacting the society, but while solving the issues with the society, we can harm environment. So they had to realize that we have to think not only the societal questions, but also environmental. And of course, it should be economic profitable for businesses. So they had to add many more sustainable development goals. And now we have 17 goals in the program for development, which is set by 2030. Pedro, could you turn off your mic? I can hear you. All right, and so yeah, we have 17 goals and we have about 10 years left to fulfill them. And again, so the main focus now is the realization that we have to think interdisciplinary. As the same way as I started the presentation, we have to think cross sectors. That's why now there are 3 major pillars. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I can. Okay. So there are 3 pillars. First is economic. It's a sufficient economy to sustain the prosperity of people. It's social, it's basically to create the society that will be nurturing for everyone, and environmental. So we take care and protect and even restore the environment. And this is important to keep in mind, so that when companies saying we are on sustainable development track, and they're saying that we are covering only one part of the pillars, let's say social, because now everyone is taking care of social. But the idea of sustainability is interplay. It is exactly the intersection between three. So if you're thinking sustainably, you have to think in three ways at the same time, and at least to cover some of the sustainable development goals. So let's take a look what is proposing the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon. He said that the business is probably the vital partner because it can act very rapidly. And basically how to start, how to start acting. First is to assess the impact of your company. Basically is to calculate the environmental footprint of your company. Second is set ambitious goals. Basically is to take a look at the sustainable development goals, to identify where is your target. And the third is really important, is communicate about your results. First of all, the results could be not always positive, right? Because it's still something new. It requires innovation. And maybe if you fail in something in your business and you share negative results, it will help others companies to save time and money. It's time where companies have to cooperate and share experiences, because we don't have much time for mistakes. And of course, to share positive results of your achievements, because it's a great motivation for others to join. And we are coming closer to the, let's see what is the next slide. The relationship between the old business models and the new business models. Business as usual, we have to go from it to the restorative business. What I mean by saying business as usual, it is the business which is still focusing only on the economic growth. And basically what we can see in the Sustainable Development Goals, it can be related to the target 8, which is sustainable economic growth, which is good by itself, but not enough to create the sustainable civilization. So we have to move to the restorative business. And this is exactly what I already said. It's a combination of social and environmental benefits along with the economic growth. And I really like this figure. I don't know if you have seen it before, the Sustainable Development Goals in such a structure. For me, it's really visual because we have the layers: economy, society, and the biosphere. But I have to tell you that you have to be really careful with distinguishing what kind of goal belong to what kind of pillar, because they're all closely interconnected. And sometimes the fulfillment of one goal can create the negative impact to another goal. So although there is a distinction, you have to be careful, because based on the specific methodology in the company, this distinction between the pillars could be a little bit different. But anyway, we can see now that we have a different value of society and biosphere beyond the economy. Yes, you have a question?
Yes. Have you heard about the B corporations? I don't know. The B corporations, like the B letter, because in one of my law classes, there was a guy who made his thesis about this subject, and apparently it's a type of certification in many countries in the world, maybe not Russia and Peru. It's just started, but it's a certification that have only some companies that do exactly what you're saying. So they have the economic interest, but they also have either a social or an ecological interest. So for example, there is a very expensive company that sells very expensive coats made of like the alpaca skin, not skin, but their hair. Yeah, and what they do is for every one coat that you buy, they give one blanket to a poor kid that's like dying from the cold in Pune. So that
this
has
is
a
exactly the
second.
model.
Yeah, and when
Yeah,
when you have that kind of companies, they certify them as B companies, and the taxes are lower. So that's
oh, that's great because of
yeah.
the taxes, because it means that the government is involved, and it's not always the case yet. But when you saying that you are meeting some sustainable development goals, you can apply for angel investment or for impact investment or social investment. So it's investors that are giving the money to companies that are trying to match these social and environmental values. And about examples, we will be finishing our lesson today with more examples. So
Yeah. Okay.
it will be very interesting to listen to more of your stories about the companies. Here on this slide, I wanted to show you that normally when business is already running, it's hard just drastically change the business model. So it had one values and suddenly in one day it has exactly different values, right? So it has to be step by step. And here I again wanted to use this diagram because I like that on the top we see the 17th Sustainable Development Goal, which is about the partnership. And just because we don't have time to lose to preserve and to help our environment, it's really valuable to start looking for similar companies, to asking for their experience, for their especially negative experience. So it will be saving time, and at the same time we can save costs. For example, if we are doing similar business, we can hire a third company which we can share expenses with. So the next step sometimes is to reevaluate the economic goals, because again, as normally the business model is targeting the goal number 8, which is about the sustainable, ever-increasing profit. Now it may think also about the innovation and infrastructure, and it will be already capturing one of the sustainable development goals. Also in the economy, there is a goal number 12, which is about responsible consumption and production. This is about thinking on the new way, on the design we produce, and to think basically how to reduce the waste we produce. So this is in the area of the zero waste companies, not companies, but strategies. And then when it comes to the society, company may think broader than before and think about, again, that there is no poverty, that the salary are reasonable, that, for example, even at the office level, that there is enough supply of water and food so that employers can work full capacity and ensure that they will have good health and well-being. And finally, normally on the last step, only the business is starting thinking about the impact on the environment. And here the key goals to think about is number 6, which is clean water and sanitation. It is number 13 about climate action. 14 is life below water, and 15, which is life on land. And I will tell you a little bit more about these environmental goals just in a second. What I wanted to show you is this SDG, which is Sustainable Development Goals Compass. I recommend you downloading this document, which is the guide for business actions on the Sustainable Development Goals. And I just wanted to show you here, they basically offering the 5-step procedure. First is to look at the Sustainable Development Goals and to understand them, because we have specific targets and the scope of the goal can be different. Then it starts the process, which is iterative process, from the defining the priorities of your company, because every business is different. So once you define the priorities, for example, you select 3 out of 17 sustainable development goals, and this will be your priorities. One from each sector, one from social, one from economic, and one from environmental. Then once you have the target, you can set the goals. And these goals should be ideally not for 15 years to the future, like in a general program of sustainable development. There should be shorter goals, like 1 year or like 2 years or 5 years goals, because business is changing rapidly, so the goals should be reasonable in the time frame. Then integrating different optimization processes, for example, how to reduce energy use in the offices, let's say. If you are working as a counter and you think that your company is not directly impacting the environment, there are always indirect impact. And the indirect impact is mainly from the buildings and from the offices. So, for example, if you're working with just computer, you're a programmer, you probably need electricity to use that computer, and your computer as well requires metals. So there are always direct and indirect impacts to the environment. And you, based on your goals, you can decrease your environmental impact. And then, as I said, it's reporting and communicating. And communication is really important, not only within the company, so that every employer knows the mission of the company. They know what is the bigger purpose that they create, for example, mobile phones. They have to know their impact at the global level. And this communication could be within the company as well as with the customers, but also with the suppliers. And once you understand your environment, you can again define your priorities and see how you can improve it. So it's iterative process of continuous improvement. All right, and the first step is understanding the Sustainable Development Goals. I just want to explain you these 4 goals, which are the, well, I would say they're the key goals for the environmental pillar. And as you already heard, the goal number 6 is basically to ensure the availability of water and sanitation. And maybe for now you don't see all these small letters and information, but you'll have these slides. I just want to draw your attention to the fact that right now the world faced the problem of COVID, and this pandemic made realize that these sustainable development goals are so urgent as never before, that still 3 billion people worldwide are still lacking the basic hand washing facilities at home. It means that this is the most effective method for prevention of the spread of disease, of viruses, and still people are lacking the basics of the clean water. And this is number 6. So I wanted to advertise you a little bit and connect the Sustainable Development Goals with the coronavirus pandemic. So the number 13 is climate action. And I think some of you may heard about that we are in the situation of lockdown at homes, and a lot of industries are shut down, as well as decrease the traffic of airplanes and just traffic on the roads. And we heard nice news that the level of air pollution decreased in many countries. Please write in the chat 4 places if you have heard that the air quality improved because of the lockdown and because we stopped the manufacture for this moment. Okay, I see attention. That's good. Someone even have 5 classes extra for someone else. It's sharing model of partnerships. All right. So yes, we all heard that the atmospheric situation has improved, and from the environmental sciences point of view, it was said that it is the biggest environmental experiment in the world, because never before in the humanity uh, so many manufacture and transportation was stopped at the same time, and at the large space, at the large territories. So although it was unintentional, it led to the new investigations, and scientists started capturing this information and figure out that it's actually have a positive feedback to the situation with the atmosphere. And everyone was very happy when we saw that the air is getting cleaner, and me as well. But it turned out that such massive environmental experiment was not enough, even what was not enough to meet the sustainable development goal. Because with all the lockdown and with all the shutting down this manufacture, the greenhouse gas emissions dropped only by 6%. So it's just 6. And in order to match the climate action, we have to decrease by almost 13%. So it means that we succeeded to decrease the greenhouse gas emissions less than a half that is required to do already today, and to change it for the last 15 years. Otherwise, we are not succeeding with actions toward um, taking these actions to combat climate change and to reduce its impact. I'm reading your comment. So it's not noticed that the global carbon content and the individual country emitted CO2 greenhouse gases are reduced, and the ozone layer in the polar region is autonomously auto-repairing effectively. It is noticed, yes, but it's not enough. Yeah. The thing is that everyone was super happy that we can see reasonable changes. They are very rapid changes. They are very optimistic changes, because that shows that we can impact our environment the way we harm it, but we can impact it in a positive way. But this is half of the effort that is needed to meet the climate action. Well, I tell you the answer. Why this was underestimated, this impact, is because the transportation is not the first reason for climate change. It's not the first emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. Does anyone know what is the first cause of the biggest greenhouse gas emissions? I will tell you. So unfortunately, it's not transport and it's not manufacture that was shut down during the virus epidemic situation. So the first cause is energy production from the fossil fuels. And what happened during the pandemic situation is that everyone was working from home. Even though we didn't use transport to go to the offices, what actually happened is that the electricity demand is doubled, because everyone was working from their laptops, everyone needed light, and for example, in the office you share light, but at home everyone was using their own light. So these small usages of electricity summed up into the very big impact. So the trades off between the greenhouse gas emissions that were prevented because transport was stopped and manufacture was stopped. At the same time, the greenhouse gas increased due to increased use of electricity. So this is a side effect, and it's always hard to understand what is the balance between two. Let me read your comment. It's not enough, but it's a proof that climate change has been going on and global society must take initiative in this issue. It's rather a good sign that countries like USA, who were not in the agreement with Paris Climate Summit Declaration. Exactly. It's very visual experimental observation that society can impact environment that rapidly. For me, it was very optimistic to see that we have a direct impact on our environment, and especially for such big countries like USA. And at the same time, it tells us that such big changes are not enough, and probably we have to look into the causes. And one of the biggest causes is, as I said, who listened to me well, what is the first cause of the greenhouse gas emissions? I'll use this moment to drink water.
Industrial and vehicular emission. Industrial thermal power plant and vehicular emissions.
Right. Thank you. And now I'll tell you what is the second cause of the biggest greenhouse gas emission. Could you turn off your mic so it won't be echo? So the second cause, probably some of you know, it is the cement production for construction. So this is the second emitter of greenhouse gases, and that's why we need new eco designs to think how we can decrease the carbon footprint. And the third is food production. So it's basically agriculture, and yeah, if you have comment.
I'm not sure is it in your attention or not. One of the key scientific impact of increasing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is because of the polar region melting. There is a lot of methane which are suppressed by the ice because of the melting and withdrawal of the ice in the polar regions. Those compressed, million of years compressed carbon dioxide, mostly methane, because they are biodegradable things. The same thing which produce carbon come from the coal. The same composition is methane in the polar regions. Because of polar ice melting, they are now released directly to the atmosphere. And this is well understood in the satellite data, especially in the polar regions. The content and the density of carbon, not only carbon dioxide, methane, and all greenhouse gases, the
Exactly.
Density is now has a direct impact. All the first, second, third causes are indirectly, but it is direct feeding the greenhouse gases content in the air.
Thank you very much. This is very important comment because there is always feedback loop, it's called, that the humanity is causing climate change or increasing temperatures, which are leading to the ice melt. And at the same time, it's starting powering the Earth machine, which, as you said, it was the hidden below the ice. And now, because the albedo of the surface is changed, when we have ice, it is very good for reflecting the sunlight, right? And now when the ice is melting, yeah, I'll take this.
Yes, exactly. It's an iterative process.
I can explain.
So we have indirectly become the cause of ice melting, and then ice melting and feedback to the air. So it's an iterative process, yes.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as I'm saying, and you're saying, changing the albedo, actually, which is the surface reflecting capacity. Now the heat is attracted to the earth and to the surface, and which is warming up the biogeochemical processes. And basically, how the methane is released is not just because it's physical interchanges, because first is physical. We had the ice on the top, which was like a cup, or how to say, like on the bottle, you know, so it was healing all the gases that were captured underneath. And when the ice is melt, it's the physical opening. So some gases can be released which were captured, for example, in the water molecules. But there is a second effect, which is from the biogeochemical point of view, is that the microorganisms that live there, they're waking up because of the higher temperatures. And microorganisms is not only bacteria or viruses, is also plants. And what they do, they respire. And how they respire? It's called the respiration. So maybe I'll ask for your attention again. And wait a second, I have to finish my idea. Please write in the chat if you know what we exhale as humans. Because we inhale oxygen, this we all know. What we exhale?
Dioxide. I don't know how to say it in English. Carbon dioxide,
Well,
is that the name?
Yeah, right now it's better, when I say write in the chat, it's better to write in the chat.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. It's just we have to be in time because I have a lot of materials prepared. Exactly, so we exhale carbon dioxide, and some bacteria as well. They breathe oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. And during the metabolism, they also produce methane. As Owen said, it's even more powerful greenhouse gas, which has about 28 more capacity in terms of the heating. And it's not only methane, it's also nitrous oxide. So all these gases are the products of microbial activity, which is now increasing due to the higher temperatures. As you know, the higher temperature, the higher metabolism. So there are double effect what is happening in the Arctic. So it's not only the physical ice removal, it's also the activation, the microorganism waking up and produce all these gases. But I have to comment that even though it's happening, right now this is not taken as the major cause of the climate change, right? So I was saying that the major causes is energy production from fossil fuels. The second is cement production, and the third is the wait a second. The third is the food production, mainly meat. So that here advice is to switch for more rich diet with vegetables and fruits. We have to keep going, otherwise we will not finish. If you have questions, you can write in chat, and if we have time, I will answer them, okay? All right, so the next Sustainable Development Goal is the number 14, which is aiming to conserve basically and use sustainably water, which is oceans, sea, and marine. And there are also direct and indirect impact of business and human. So first of all, direct impact, you obviously know, this is the fishing and hunting in the sea, right? And already about 100 countries signed the agreement to stop illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. While this is more or less clear impact, the second impact is indirect, and this is less obvious. This is through the acidification, which is basically when there are emissions of carbon dioxide from the manufacturer to the atmosphere. Yes, we know that the concentration of carbon dioxide is decreasing. But what happens is that our planet is finite space, and there is always chemical equilibrium between different parts of the Earth, between atmosphere, between biosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere. So Earth is always trying to find a new equilibrium. And when there is too much of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it basically dissolves to the water, which makes more acidic water, and the more acidity, the lower pH. And this is what people mean when they speak about acidification of oceans, because this directly impacts the algae, plants, which are the basics of the food chain for the entire ecosystem. And basically from the coral reef bleaching, the entire ecosystem is suffering. And this is the second impact on the life below water from the humanity, which is indirect in this context. And the last one is Sustainable Development Goal number 15. It is basically life on land to protect forests and to preserve ecosystem biodiversity. Because what is happening is we have the planetary boundaries. And there is a system that scientists calculated that we have some limits that we can reach on the planet. And one limit is climate change that we already crossed. So we are beyond the point that we can continue business as usual. And the second is biodiversity loss. I just tell you that the third one is the changed balance between nitrogen and phosphorus, which is leading to the death of lakes and rivers. But here is more focusing on the biodiversity in general. And the fact is that 10 million hectares of forest are destroyed every year, and it again has direct and indirect impact on the biodiversity. So this is something that every business can think. For example, where are the supplies for their manufacture coming from? Is it responsible forest usage, or, for example, different resources or water? Is it responsibly taken or not? So these were the key 4 sustainable development goals that every business company have at least consider with the board of directors, and how to define the priorities. Here you can see, for example, your company. But again, as I told you, now we have to think more broadly and not only focusing on the scale of your company, but also looking backwards and to see the entire value chain from the raw materials to suppliers to logistics, and then beyond your company to distribution, product use, and product end life, and try to identify how you can minimize negative impact. So let's say with the clean water and sanitation at the suppliers, you can reduce the water consumption in the stressed regions, because at some regions we have the renew, how to say, the water can be renewed in the underground, groundwater can be renewed faster than in other regions because it depends on the climate. So if you are taking water from the resources that can be depleted fast, you better choose different suppliers. And you try to identify different sustainable development goals at entire value chain. And here it comes from the, here it comes the life cycle assessment. Because it's not enough just to sit and to think, okay, here we use water, here we use energy, here we use, let's say, trees to create paper if you're a paper producing plant. It's very important to calculate and put numbers, how much exactly you're using and how changes in practices will minimize the environmental impact, but at the same time will save you money. Because of course, business companies, they don't want to sacrifice their economic profit because they want to take care of the environment. So it has to be profitable for them. But since natural resources, they cost money, normally it's really simple relationship. The less resources you use, the less it costs you and the less waste you produce. And so far, the best tool, I would say, it is a life cycle assessment, is international standard procedure, which is under the ISO standards 14. It could be 14 or 41 or 42, depends on the scope and definition. And here is what is important. It's pretty difficult to make this assessment. That's why normally the entire consulting companies work for this. And you don't necessarily need the employees that can perform this. You better hire professionals and ask them to perform life cycle assessment of your product. And what is important here to understand is that the scope can be very different. For example, let's think about the mobile phone, right? You may assess the scope of one phone, or you may assess the scope of the entire set with the charger, with the other devices like earphones or something else. And this will define the environmental impact. right? Because, for example, the charger can be produced a different country as the phone itself. It depends. But it's really important to identify the scope. Is it one product? Is it 1 kilogram of product? Or it is the entire setup? And then basically what it produces, it provides you with the opportunity to improve and develop your new design. So basically you can compare it to design options and say this is cost less me, but this is say uses less resources, which is better for the environment. It also helps you to plan strategically for your company. For example, we know that right now in Europe, the situation with metals is really fragile because right now there is a list of critical raw materials, and the list includes 28 metals, which are already, how to say, we have less them left in the crust than we use and require to use every day in our life. For example, for renewable energy, we know that they require rare earth metals, and rare earth metals, they're already depleted. So it's also like the question of trade-offs. What is better, to produce renewable energy or use up all the rare earth, which are already limited? And for example, you're producing mobile phone, and you want it to vibrate, so you will need a metal tungsten, which is mined in Africa. But you know that metal tungsten is in the list of critical raw materials. It means that there is simply not enough left in the earth. So you better think with your team of engineers how to replace this metal with different metal, how to change the design, or maybe how to minimize the amount of this metal that you use. So these are questions are all about the strategic planning, because if you don't have enough supply of resources, you won't be able to deliver the product. Of course, it also changes the public attitude to your company when you say that we are responsible for the environmental impact that we are causing, because we calculated, we know how much we impact environment, and we are trying to do our best. And for example, our goals to decrease carbon dioxide emissions within 1 year by 5%. You may reach it or you may not reach it, but at least if you start reporting, you may see where are the best practices that you can apply to your company. So yeah, please remember this tool, which is life cycle assessment. So it says that it's entire life cycle. It's not about only your company. It's about the suppliers, and it's also about where the product would go after the usage stage. And here it comes to the circular economy. Please write number 2 in chat if you heard about circular economy. Okay, the most active student is already answered. Anyone else? Probably it's too early. Thank you, Lucia. Okay, I hope that someone who hasn't heard, okay, thank you. All right, so circular economy is basically when the producer is taking the responsibility to think beyond the model that we take, make, and dump, but to think how to reuse the essential resources. And the circular economy, now it comes to the question where it's important to understand that we have technical resources and we have biological resources. Technical is basically the same metals that I was explaining to you. For example, when mobile phone is broken right now, nowadays, because we know that the tungsten is already a critical metal, it's we cannot just dump it or waste it. We have to take it apart and take this crucial metal. So this would be the technical nutrient. And when we're speaking about biological nutrients, it's about the food. And basically, I already told you that the food production is the third largest industry that has impact on the greenhouse gas emissions. And that's why the biological nutrients are as crucial as technical nutrients. The fact that a lot of resources like land, water, again, electricity is required to produce, especially meat. This is the most resource consuming industry. And then some of this, I think about global statistics, is about 20 to 30% is lost on the way, on the transportation way to the market. So we cannot allow ourselves to lose such crucial resources. And then instead of dumping into the landfill, we have to make a compost out of it. So it will one day return to the soil. And this will close this biogeochemical cycle, which is actually the ecosystem cycle. So the best what we can do is to look at the natural ecosystems and see how it is working in the forest, let's say. Because all the resources, for example, the tree, how it creates the leaves. Here I have the leaves, right? So the tree sucks up the carbon dioxide and it was gaseous form, and it creates the biomass, which is carbon but in organic form. And then when the leaves will fall down, it will create the compost, which will finally become a soil again. So this will become the carbon in the soil. And after all, as we were speaking about the Arctic, when the microorganisms are using organic carbon in the soil, they ending up it in the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So the cycle is closing, and it's basically the journey of carbon from gaseous to solid state and perhaps to the liquid state when it is inside of the bodies, inside of the cells. And then it's coming back to the atmosphere. So ideally, the same humanity shall do. We shall close the cycle of these nutrient journeys, which is possible still do with biological nutrients. But it's really important to understand that it's impossible to do with technical nutrients. Once the metals, they were extracted from the earth, there has been changed so drastically that we cannot just put them back and they will be incorporated into the ecosystem. No, they have been layering into the lithosphere during 4.5 billion years. So it's impossible just to dump it back and hope that it will restore our ecosystem. Once we took something from the crust, it's gone from the lithosphere. And the best what we can do is reuse it. And here you can see that the energy from renewable resources is basically once you have taken something, try to either prolong its usage, like life duration, or try to recycle as much as you can, because this is already has been taken and we don't have a second earth to take it from. All right, so this is the concept of the circular economy, and I know now, I hope that you understand the crucial difference between biological and technical nutrients. Okay, here we come to the circular economy different models. We have the eco designs. It can be actually whatever you may think, it could be eco design. It's different strategies. And I just collected some of these examples to demonstrate you. First of all, design for recycling. What it means that right now, nowadays, even if you want to recycle batteries from the cars, it's impossible, just because on the process of the design of these batteries, they were not designed for recycling. It means that the alloys of metals are chemically bounded, and it's impossible to separate them, detach them from each other. So this has to be taken in mind on the design stage. And if you want to recycle something after its use phase, you have to use less complex materials. So avoid mixed materials which is hard to take apart from. It has to be something that can easily be taken apart so that it can be recycled later on. Second, design for maintenance and repair. Right now, there is the best computer that can be recycled, not recycled, but prolonged. The usage is 70% can be replaced. It makes it is possible because it is made of detachable things again, so that we not necessarily need to waste the entire computer. We can just replace some parts of it, and we can have the spare parts. Okay, the next one is design for standardization and compatibility. For example, the charges. Um, Here on the picture, I tried to show you that we have different, for example, chargers for the devices. And it's also complicates. It makes us use more resources. And the question, why don't we have just single charger for many different devices? Why we have to complicate and use more and more resources for such basic things? So you better use standardized system for different options. For example, the same bottles. For example, in Russia, in 80s, 90s, we had milk in the same bottles made of glass, and it was very easy to reuse them because of the same shape. It was easy to clean them, to reuse them, but right now all the companies try to use unique design, which is really hard to reuse them later on. So standardization is basically making it simpler to reuse later on. The next one is design for adaptability. Is basically to think one step ahead. What is going to be the next capacity of the device? Maybe you can improve something now that it will last longer. The next one is the nanotechnologies. Basically, nanotechnologies, as you may understand from the name, nano, it's really small size. So basically, it's optimum use of amount of resources to provide a good quality. Again, nanotechnologies are saving resources. And the last one is my favorite because this is to learn from nature. I like this example with the carpet company, which is called Interface. And basically, they have the entire department of the engineers who are working on the principles of biomimicry. They had this carpet cover, and they used to have glue which was containing toxic elements. And basically, this is also environmental impact. If you are using some components in your design that are toxic, they can be toxic to human, but if not at the office, they can be toxic to environment once they are disposed at the landfill. So they decided that they will avoid using of toxicity, and they looked into the plants and found out the mechanism how these small plants have small hooks to stick on the different surfaces. Maybe sometimes walking in the forest, you notice that you have some plants sticked on your clothes or hair, which is more annoying. So these kind of mechanisms with small tiny hooks makes plants to stick really well to different surfaces. And they employ this mechanism to the carpets. So now the pieces of carpets, they are stick to each other without any glue. And this is the best, I would say, environmental friendly solution. All right. Are you sleepy still, or are you doing good? Yeah, water helps refresh. All right. So one of the examples that I wanted to show you from the circular economy approach is how to decrease the amount of waste you produce. And I really like this example because here is the example how to paint a car. you imagine that there is a lot of painting material we need to paint a car. And basically, when the system analysis was performed, the company realized that they were using 10 buckets of paint to paint one car. And of course, there are always losses of material because we always have losses in materials and resources. And it ended up out of 10 buckets of painting, they used only, after all, it was an amount of only one that was on the surface of the car. So they tried to optimize it and looked into the methodology, how they do so, how they dissolve it, or how they purify it, or how they spray it. So they tried to optimize at every step and find the solution. So that after optimization, they ended up using only 3 buckets of painting, and the efficiency of this was much higher. Yeah, so from 90% losses, they ended up with 30% losses, which means that less toxicity in the environment, because we know that painting is toxic, and then it is less cost for the company because they need less material. And here I wanted to say, maybe some of you heard about the zero waste logos or companies or strategies. Please write 5 in the chat if you have heard about any zero waste activities. If you ever heard about the zero waste strategies, for example, a company saying, we have the program zero waste, or someone is selling the t-shirt and saying, we are employing zero waste design. If you ever heard about it, write 5 or no. Okay. Yes, there are several zero waste strategies. Yes. Some of you have heard, some of you not. I just want to caution you that from the chemical point of view or thermodynamic point of view, it's impossible to have zero waste technology. Although it is a beautiful name for a strategy, we always have losses because it's impossible to use always 100% of materials. So that means that you always need to think about the potential losses from your manufacturer and of your design. And it is more realistic if you say we are aiming low waste rather than zero waste, because zero waste is a good logo, but it's not real technological. It's not real from the technological point of view. Another example is light design. So in Germany, they have cars which are very heavy. They are basically made to transport refrigerated or frozen food. And as you know, refrigeration requires installations which make a car very heavy. And some of you may know that if car is heavy, it consumes more fuel, which is finally more expensive for a company. If you're having a transportation company, your costs directly depend on the amount of fuel your car is using. So what they did, they optimized the design of the vehicle of the car, and they reduced the weight of the car by 16%, which made them use less fuel, and at the same time is less emissions to the atmosphere. All right, what do we have next? Functional economy. Instead of selling the product, you can give it for rent. And this perhaps you know from for example, it's like sharing economy as well, from BlaBlaCar, when people don't own, but they share, or they take it as a service. And for business companies, it's also important because when they think that they will have the same product ownership of this product for a longer time, they will feel responsibility to make this product last longer than usual, because it is their product after all. So this is a different already business approach, because sometimes the companies produce just to sell and forget. You don't care how long will it last. But if you're in the functional economy, you're something giving for lease or for rent, it's your direct interest to make the product to last longer. Then you have option to return the resources that are already invested in this product. You can reuse them, you can recycle them, or you can resell them or repurpose. And also it helps from the economic point of view to have a strategic planning, because it won't be that risky that, for example, right now is the crisis and not everyone want to buy a product. But if you lend it for rent, the payment is continuous, so it's easier to predict your economic plan for the few months or even years. And the extended producer responsibility, when it's partially part of the previous model, when, for example, here, business to business operation, you're producing the juice in the glass bottle, and then after you can make a contract or make a partnership with a company that would collect the glass bottles, clean them, and prepare for you so you can use them again. So it's a different partnership between the companies. Okay, and now the time for interaction. I would like to ask you to find your own examples of different strategies, how to optimize environmental impact of the company, and at the same time do not lose in the economic profit. And I would like, wait a second. First, I would like you to familiarize yourself with such a tool, which is called Circulator. It's like calculator, but the circular economy. And basically, you can use it online. In a second, I will give you the link. And there are three parts in the mixture. The first one, the blue, is circular value creation strategies. So it's basically the materials you will use or the activities you perform. The second one is value proposition strategies. Is basically how you deliver it to your clients or how you communicate to your clients. And the last one is value network strategies, is entire value chain from the extraction to the recycling. So it's before the company and after the company responsibility. And for example, here, when you can select one of each, and just for an example, I selected one, material for recycling, localization, and cost reduction. And it provides me one case as an idea, for example, if you would like to become entrepreneurship. And this is a company called Circle from Belgium, which is focusing on the sustainable development goal, which is related to food and waste. So how it works? It basically, when they deliver food, at the same time, they can take back some type of waste or even resources that were not used. And then this waste can be recycled, or if something was not used, it can be reused and delivered to charities. And something can be sold to different companies for recycling, and profits from this go to charities. So here you can see the example how the environmental, social, and economic benefits work just in one company. And so what I want to ask you to do is team up. Let's see how many people we have. I see 19 people. With the lecturers, I think there were about like 16 students, if I'm not mistaken. So we will team in different teams. I will give you this web link, and I would like you to play with this circulator and select maybe 2, maybe 3 companies and discuss their strategies. And once you have discussed it, the very final step will be to share your personal experience with such kind of companies. Maybe you already used these kind of companies, or maybe you have heard about them, like big companies. If let's say it has many more specific examples, this will be interesting to hear here. Yeah, and then to share to class to inspire us for more ideas for changes in the business. And just before we are coming to this interaction, I want to show you the last slide just to make sure that I will give you all the materials I had for today, because interactive activity can always be a little bit longer. So to summarize today's lecture, how to green the business. This is a list of my personal advice. First step is, first of all, we have to realize that human activities, regardless of the specific profession, we depend and has influence on the natural resources. And also we have to realize that these resources are limited. The second step, once we know that we are interconnected with nature, the board of directors have to meet and discuss that the business model perhaps can be redirected, and take a look at the sustainable development goals to identify what is possible from your side. Step 3 is probably to hire the eco management team to perform the life cycle assessment. So this is a tool which is standardized internationally, and it can provide you answers. Where are the hidden costs and how to optimize environmental footprint? And the step 4 is set goals, because without goals, it is always nice to be a dreamer of a better world, but we have to be specific. So the goals should be per 1 year or per 5 years. And of course, it's impossible. It's not impossible. It's important to track achievements and continuously learn from nature. This was my feedback, and just to show you that I'm available for any comments or questions after the class is ended. This is some list of recommendations for you for reading: The Ecology of Commerce, Cradle to Cradle, and The Compass with the guide for business, how to act towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And then you can find me on email or on Instagram, wherever it's more convenient for you. This information will be available to you after the class. So now I would like to return to the slide with the interaction activity, and I will send you the link. How are you feeling? Please write 10 if you're tired and 1 if you are still good. Tired, of course, I can understand. All right, now I think I need to create the different groups. I know that in previous classes you already grouped in teams, right? Okay, who speaks Spanish?
Usually the professors pick the groups. We didn't before.
Mm-hmm. The problem that today when I practiced with the tool, it was in English, but now I am at work and all the computer is in Spanish, and I'm not that fluent in Spanish yet.
Oh, that's great.
Voy a crear salas externas. I think this is it. Number of salas. So let's make 4 of them, or maybe 3. We don't have much time. And the duration, I think 15 minutes will be enough, but probably even 10 will be enough. There are not that many people today. Okay, I have groups, and I'm creating this now. I think you will see groups appearing on your
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
As far as I can see, everyone is back from the groups. It was rather limited time. Are you back? You all hear me?
Yes, we are back and we hear you.
Either I have problems with microphone or everyone is shy.
No, we hear you.
How are you? Did you succeed to join group or not?
We have selected two companies.
Wait a second. I see that you're speaking, but probably I have issues with my headphones now.
My colleague
Yeah,
lists two companies, one
I
company
don't have sound. Sorry,
and one company H&M ILC.
Because I was switching from the groups and refresh.
Lucia, go ahead.
Like the entire screen to refresh.
Lucia, continue. You tell one and I'll tell something about H&M.
Meanwhile, you can maybe discuss in chat.
Yeah, but she doesn't hear us.
She doesn't hear us. Group. To take off?
Why not?
No,
Katrina, why can't you listen us?
Refresh.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit scared to refresh the entire window. I will lose all of you.
Okay, so we already made our choice. I'm just going to say what I think, and because we didn't have that much time to discuss.
Well, Lucia, you can tell something about one, and I'll tell about something like that.
What?
Say something about one, and I can say something about H&M.
Okay, fine.
What's about our other colleague? Anybody want to tell? Then we can give them opportunity too. If nobody else will tell, then I can tell about H&M. But if anybody is interested to jump into and have some information here, then we can support them also.
I guess
so let's ask our colleagues what they want.
Can you hear us now, Ekaterina? No? You cannot hear us? No?
I tried to return your
No?
Yeah.
Really?
No, I don't hear you.
What's about other people? Can they listen you? Katerina, can other colleague, other person listen you?
I mean, it must be her. She must be the one whose audio doesn't work, because I can hear you and you can hear me, and we can both hear her. So
yes, something related to her audio.
We don't hear you now, Ekaterina.
Katerina,
I think that she hears us, but we don't hear her.
So what are the two companies? You see, I will tell about
Patagonia and H&M.
Patagonia, you can tell I have less idea, but about H&M, I can discuss about cost reduction, branding, then repair, reuse, remanufacture. In that context, I can tell some words. But let's ask.
Use the link I sent from the calculator.
Hey, I can hear you.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so we can be first because.
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, so we chose H&M and Patagonia. I will briefly say that Patagonia is a company based in California, and what they do is they basically reuse clothes, and they let their clients bring clothes so that they can repair them. And they also have a policy of not selling and their clients not buying anything that's not actually useful. So they don't just sell for fashion, they sell items that you might need, and it's active wear, so for sports. That's what they do. And
Yeah,
then
that's-
Almo talk about H&M.
Okay,
Thank you for this.
H&M belongs to Sweden basically, but it's very dominant in whole Europe. In Germany, France, they have a dominant reputation towards the clothing and different kind of garments. And with respect to the concept circular business mixture, so I think H&M has its own industrial production in Bangladesh and Asian countries where the labor cost is less. That's why H&M is very popular in European countries because of the cost reduction. And they have a very good strategic policy in Germany, especially France, in European countries, that they can return return the clothes what they buy within 14 days.
Sorry, we have limited time. If you have a specific comment, go for it, or give your example. We have to be short now because everyone has to share their example.
Okay. Our personal experience in my country, I have never recycled with any of these companies. And about the example, I think I gave one before, which is yet another company that's in my country, and what they do, right? You buy one coat and they give one to a poor kid that's dying from the cold.
Yeah. So it's also charity included.
Yeah.
That's
It has
great
both
example.
social and like ecological impact, right?
Yeah, that's a very good example. Does anyone else has an example to share with us? Please don't be shy. I know that you are there. It's the end of the class, so just 5 minutes more and you can go enjoy your tea. All right.
In
Yes.
my country,
Okay.
Wow, where is Katrina disappeared? Боже мой.
Yeah, Боже мой. Well, yeah.
Katya is that? Okay.
We have a little bit problems with the connection. So what I'm offering is to wrap up our lesson today. And basically to say that the business, which is already changing, it has also its problems and difficulties because it's not an easy way to change. So as a customer, you can always choose to support these kind of companies that either use secondary materials or they try to recycle, and of course that they try to help improve environment or decrease environmental footprint, and as well as to take care of the society. So that's the choice we make every day, and I think that it's feasible for each of us. Try to think more globally. And as I started, I wanted to repeat this phrase: think local. No, think. I forgot how I started. I'm also tired. Think local and global, right?
Right now, we feel like we watch a ghost movie. You are appearing, disappearing, appearing, disappearing. You are speaking, we are listening.
All right. I hope this lesson was useful for you, and I hope that you enjoyed this program of high technologies management school. And this is to say that you couldn't visit Russia in person, but I'm sure that in next year you can come and visit all the excursions that you've seen online. Then I will do the presentation, so you will have the slides, and feel free to contact, to keep in touch, and I don't know, share your experience.
Спасибо большое, Katya.
Спасибо вам. Well, as you see, my camera doesn't want to turn on. Thank you everyone for participation, for active listening, and I hope that we will make our future better.